Hey everybody, this is Kodak here, and this week we're going to be talking Pokemon. I'm sure a lot of you are excited for the new Nintendo Switch game, Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. Or maybe not. I don't know if I've heard too many exciting things about it, but this week a company called Wicked Cool has sent me a bunch of their new Pokemon stuff, and Wicked Cool being this astronaut over here. Now, I have had Wicked Cool on the show before, and last time that happened it was when I ripped their Scanimals toy a new one. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised that they've gotten back to me too. Now, back on topic, Pokemon merchandise in the United States has actually had kind of an interesting journey. When Pokemon first came out, it was produced by Hasbro, who for the most part had just brought over the toys created by Tomy and licensed them for American distribution. Sometime around Generation 3, that got changed over to Jakks Pacific, who for the most part made a lot of their own toys. Now, come Generation 5, and it gets changed over to Tomy, the people who tend to make the Pokemon toys in Japan. They brought over an assortment of those toys along with some new stuff, and now, kind of oddly at the tail end of Generation 7, it has switched over to Wicked Cool. I'm not sure why the change took place. I've heard from some people that it was maybe a distribution issue regarding Tomy or whatever, but anyway, we're going to be taking a look at the stuff that Wicked Cool has put out. I actually got a good look at a lot of the stuff at Toy Fair, and a lot of it's really impressive, which is a shame that they didn't send me a few things. They didn't send me any of the plush, they didn't send me any of the stuff aimed mostly at girls, which also includes for the most part a lot of the Eeveelutions, like Espeon here, my favorite Eeveelution, which I didn't put in my top 15 Pokemon video. Why again? Anyway, it's actually kind of a shame, because when I met these guys at Toy Fair, the things like the plush and the clip-and-go Pokeballs were the things that they were super proud of, and, you know, they kind of deserve to be super proud of it. There's a reason why the plush tends to be a really good selling item, and they've definitely made some good stuff there. And the clip-and-go Pokeballs, they're Pokeballs that have sort of a kickstand, but when you close it, it goes completely flush, so it just turns into an ordinary Pokeball. Now, Wicked Cool's approach to the Pokemon toys is a little bit different from things we've seen in the past. I mean, it's similar, but one thing that they seem to have done away with are a lot of the sort of gimmicky pieces. Like, I know Tomy put out like these weird rolling Pokeballs that like roll up and eat a Pokemon like Pac-Man, but here's the thing is, I think I actually speak for everybody here when I say that Pokemon fans don't want these kinds of gimmicks. They would rather, you know, can we just have a larger version of the figure for the same price, please? I think that's kind of what people generally want, and it looks like Wicked Cool has taken that subject to heart. I mean, there are definitely things such as the clip-and-go Pokeball and what I have here, the Pop Action Pokeball, but for the most part, it looks like anything that they do, any kind of action gimmick, is built into the figure itself rather than needing some kind of external component. So, now, one thing you're going to notice about these toys is that they do focus kinda heavily on Pikachu and the three Unova starters, Popplio, Litten, and Rowlett. And, you know, honestly, I don't have a problem with that. These are the sorts of toys that are meant more for kids. I mean, I would love it if they had a greater variety of characters, but for the most part, these are toys aimed at kids, and the older fans of Pokemon tend to know where to find their fix. Since they've sent me so much stuff, I'm going to be breaking this up into several vehicles, so let's start with these smaller figures here. So these are the basic battle figures and battle figure packs. They can contain either 2 smaller Pokemon or 1 medium-sized Pokemon for $7. As you can see, we have a little bit of variety here, mostly consisting again of the 3 starters in the Alola region, along with Pikachu and the Alolan Muck. It might be kind of interesting to see any packs like this that contain both the original and the Alolan form, just for a bit of fun. But they're focusing mostly on these newer starter characters because this is their Season 1. They actually refer to this as Series 1 of their Pokemon toys that they're putting out. So here is a closer look at Popplio and Pikachu, and as you can see, they are quite a bit different from how a lot of the older Tomy figures are. They are roughly the same scale, but they use a different kind of plastic. The Tomy figures, such as this more recent Pikachu that I have here, have a more glossy, shinier color scheme to them as compared to the Wicked Cool variations that have a more pearlescent or matted sheen on their plastic. Now, this is sort of the standard Battle Collection Pikachu that we're looking at here and comparing to the Wicked Cool toys. Now, the Wicked Cool toys do have some decent physicality. They will stay standing when placed up. Popplio is a little bit awkward due to the fact that it's a sea lion and doesn't really have a pair of genuine hind legs, but you can see they put some effort into it. There's some interesting physicality to the pose with how it has its tail kind of flipped to the side. Now, as for how these figures actually are, they're not exactly flawless. Unfortunately, I can see some of the molding markings, particularly on Popplio, that do stand out a little bit, but there are still some interesting things to it. On the bottom of Popplio's foot, one thing I noticed was that it actually has a little Series 1 printed on its bottom foot to indicate that this is, in fact, a Series 1 Pokemon. That's actually something I haven't seen them do before. It's usually some sort of etched or engraved copyright label, but they actually printed the S1 on the back of its feet. That's kind of interesting. It'll see if it'll affect the collector value any. So let's take a look at one of the medium figures in the form of Alolan Muk. Now, it's kind of interesting that they chose to do Alolan Muk among all of the Alolan Pokemon. Marowak would have probably been my first choice, although that is apparently coming out in a later line. And over Alolan Muk, I probably would have gone with Alolan Dugtrio instead. The triple Fabio action there would have been pretty cool, although, as it boasts on the box, what they say is that it's articulated, and by that they mean you can pose his one giant arm up here. Now, one thing about this figure that I did find remarkable is that despite how it looks, it actually doesn't have very much paint on it. These green, blue, and yellow layers, these are actually molded in the plastic, which is very impressive considering how they had to have it consistent with how it looked on the box. The only paint are the eyes, the white parts, and the pink parts, and the pink paint isn't really the best, but considering that it's a mass of sludge, I don't really fault it for not being the most consistent thing in the world. It's just a solid yellow on the bottom. Here's another look at the articulated arm. It kind of reminds me of one of those lucky cats you get at a restaurant, you know? It's kind of beckoning. I think there's significance to having just the right arm raised to... Might be kind of funny to see this thing decorated out with like some cat ears or something and being portrayed as like the beckoning cat, but otherwise it's a very nice look. Alolan Muk is different from regular Muk in that it's supposed to look more like sort of an oil slick, like when oil hits water, rather than the purple sludge that the original Muk is. It's a bit of an interesting Pokemon to use. And finally, we have the Barn Owl Rowlett and Litten, the striped kitten. This is another 2-pack, which has the two starters facing each other, so it's two of the smaller figures against one another, and I do admit I like how Rowlett is done. It's kind of, it's a very basic pose. It doesn't really seem to be striking much of a battle pose with its wings open like this and with one foot kind of off of the ground, but Litten here is a bit of an interesting story. I don't know if this was intentional, but here's the thing about Litten. I think with the pose they gave it, they were trying to make it resemble its battle pose from the video games. The problem with that is because of its big ol' head, it keeps on, you know, tipping forward off of its feet and onto its whiskers, although that's not such a bad thing. When it's in this posture, it looks like it's pouncing onto something, you know, like you'd see an actual cat or kitten do when chasing like a bug or something like that, and I find that kind of has its own charm to it. Pokemon Sun and Moon is a very dynamic animated series. I absolutely love it, and having something that sort of captures that bit of motion isn't necessarily a bad thing. So that is a look at the battle figures and the battle figure packs. For the medium-sized figures, there are also Metang and Wobbuffet, and for the smaller figures, there is one more set, including the Alolan Rattata and Sandygast, that little sandcastle Pokemon. Like I said, these are a bit of a mixed bag. I do like how they look. I'm kind of keen on how they've done the sort of softer plastic look, although, like I said, the physicality on some of the figures is a bit off. I mean, they do all stand up fairly well, which is more than I can say for a lot of the Tomy figures, which go more towards having sort of a faithful sculpt regardless of their ability to stand up. And these figures being able to stand on their own is actually surprisingly important to me. These smaller figures, you can also occasionally find them in things like the Clip and Go Pokeballs, and they have like some special figures that have an alternate pose, or at least an alternate facial sculpt of some kind inside these sort of fancy cases, which are designed similarly, and all of them look different. You don't really get the same figure reprinted several times. All of them come in different poses, which is also very nice. I hope that they make more use of this sort of medium-sized categories, and we can get some other Pokemon that are similar to it, ones that are a bit different. And I do kind of like that they're combined together, which means that the assortments can have a greater variety rather than just trying to force their way into having these sorts of combinations there. So that is a look at the battle figures. Next time we will be coming back with the battle feature figure packs. Until next time, this is Kodak signing off.